island chain. Now, where is the second island chain? The second island chain is all the way to Guam. In other words, practically the entire Philippine Sea, from the Philippines to Guam. If they succeed in expanding and stretching their area of control, the Philippines would fall under their area of control, including Taiwan and maybe even Japan. So there is that conflict and contest right now. Recently, last September, early September, President Xi Jinping of China delivered a speech during a military parade. And in that speech, he made a commitment for peaceful development. He made an announcement, and I quote, "We Chinese love peace." But while he was talking of peace, at the same time, they were conducting a big military parade there to show that they are really a rising power. And here's President Xi Jinping, and this is some of the hardware that they were displaying. So that's why there's a conflict, a contradiction in what they're talking. They're talking of peace, but at the same time, they're displaying all their brand new weapons. Like me, for example, how could I talk of peace if I would be surrounded by bodyguards brandishing deadly weapons? So there is a contradiction. Now they have a layered deterrence strategy. This is part of the deterrence strategy, using all kinds of missiles to surround China and then, of course, project power in order to control areas outside of China. Now, another area that we must look into, and this is not a security matter, but an environmental matter, the destruction of coral reefs. All those structures being reclaimed are built on top of existing coral, well, now they're dead, coral reefs. These coral reefs are very important for food, for the fishing resources. They threaten marine life. In fact, according to a study, approximately 300 million people are dependent on the marine resources in the South China Sea for their livelihood. And according to them, China's continuous reclamation would lead to a massive economic problem. Massive economic problem. This is 300 billion. And there's a study also, this is just to show you, this was Fiery Cross Reef, practically underwater. In just about 1 year, the whole place is covered with sand and cement. And in the process, destroying the coral reefs. There's a study by a renowned marine biologist, Professor John McManus, and he said that what is going on there, where the loss of thousands of acres of reef is considered the quickest rate of permanent loss of coral reef area in human history. This is Mississippi Reef, practically underwater after 1 year. All the reefs have been covered already. This is Subi Reef. The South China Sea is very important. It accounts for 10% of global fish stocks. That is how important the South China Sea is. And if you want to imagine what would the effect of losing 10%, try not eating 1 day for every 10 days that you have. That is the equivalent of losing 10% of the fish stocks of the world. Now, as a result of this, our NGO, and this was announced earlier, our NGO is called Movement and Alliance to Resist China's Aggression. And we filed a letter and protest addressed to the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and also the Director General of the United Nations Environment Program. And it is a big coincidence that very recently, just last September 25 or September 26, the United Nations approved 17 SDGs. We used to have the MDG, the Millennium Development Goals. Now we have the SDGs. These are the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of them is SDG number 14, which addresses, and I quote, conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. And now we are testing the United Nations as well as the UNEP, whether they're really serious about this. Because if they're serious, they should do something about the reclamation activities of China, destroying the coral reefs in the South China Sea. Now, China is big, but believe it or not, China suffers from a very vulnerable geography. And I think this is the reason why they are so aggressive. If you see China here, they have a big landmass, but they have a short coastline compared to the landmass. And they're surrounded by countries that are not exactly friendly to them. There is Japan to the east, there is Taiwan, South Korea is a little wishy-washy, of course, it's the Philippines with our treaty with the United States. There is the Malacca Strait, which is a choke point. There is India, which is also not so friendly to them. They have a land border with India, and they have a conflict in the Indian Ocean. So they feel that they're being cornered here, and that is true. They suffer from several choke points. Their so-called sea lines of communications, SLOCs, can be interdicted, can be blockaded, and it can kill their trade in just a few months. This is what you call the sea lines of communication. For example, the Indian Navy can block them in the Indian Ocean. A small deadly force based in Singapore, and it's already existing there, can paralyze China's seabound trade west of the South China Sea. Vietnamese submarines operating near China can wreak havoc on the Chinese merchant marine and even the PLA Navy. A small squadron of Australian submarines positioned in the southern periphery of the South China Sea can stop China's seaborne trade. Of course, to the east, China can be blocked by Japan, which has a very powerful military, both Navy and Air Force. And even the Philippines, with a little military upgrading. Kung maseryoso lang natin ang military upgrading natin, it also gives them a lot of problems. Using small guided missile boats and array of medium-based, land-based mobile missiles. This is the strategic choke point dilemma. China, big country, but surrounded, cornered. That's why they feel so insecure. This is the Malacca dilemma. 70% of their oil trade passes to the Malacca, and that oil trade can be stopped, and it can strangle their economy. So this is not just a South China security situation. It has now become an Indo-Pacific security situation stretching from the Pacific Ocean all the way to the Indian Ocean. And here, we are witnessing the convergence of the most powerful military powers in the world. There is now a new arms race, and at the head of the new arms race is China. Because what is China doing? They have allocated something like $131 billion per year and growing by about 10% to build up the military. They now boast of an aircraft carrier. Ito yung bagong lumang aircraft carrier nila, no? Luma nito, about 30 years old, but they converted that. They have powerful submarines, nuclear powered, with ballistic missiles, kilo-class submarines from Russia. They have very modern destroyers, Luyan class and Luhai class, and they have a big air force. And many of their planes are already manufactured by them. They have 75 Su-27 from Russia, 205 Shenyang. This is equivalent to the Su-27 that they already manufactured. Plus 240 Chengdu J-10 multi-role fighters also manufactured in China. Made in China na. Sabi ko nila, don't worry about it, they're made in China. But in view of her assertive and aggressive stance in the South China Sea, East China Sea and other parts of Asia, China, ironically, has triggered a coalition against itself. Parang sa eskwelahan, pag nagbully ka, mga ibang bata, magkakaisa in order to counter you. And of course, at the head of the coalition would be the original bully, the United States. The Indo-Pacific security complexion changed radically with a series of strong statements and warnings from the USA. You know, a bully cannot stand another bully. So, Secretary Carter, the Defense Secretary, issued a warning to China, stop it now. They were talking of the reclamation projects there. They're talking of the militarization of the disputed features in the South China Sea by China. And they said, during the change of command in the Pacific Command, that the U.S. will remain the principal security power in the Asia-Pacific for decades to come. Kung sa Tagalog, teritoryo ko to. Akin ito, hindi ko pwedeng pumasok dito. There should be no mistake. The United States will fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows, as we do all around the world. And the first thing that they did sometime in May was to fly a P-8A Poseidon maritime surveillance aircraft on top of one of the islands there. Now, this is not just an ordinary surveillance aircraft. This aircraft has the capability to fight ships. It can fight a ship from about 200 miles away because they have missiles, they have cruise missiles, they have a lot of other countermeasures, and of course, the biggest weapon would be their carrier battle groups. And very recently, they came out with a PR notice announcing that they have this new $7 billion warship, very high-tech looking, very modern looking, called the USS Zhongguo, DDG-1000, in order to counteract China's military buildup. And this ship can be a one-man wrecking team because it has stealth capabilities, it can approach a city undetected, and it has all kinds of weapons to destroy a city or destroy a fleet. And of course, the most significant development is the U.S. strategic pivot to Asia Pacific. The Asia pivot. What is the Asia pivot all about? This is how it looks now. They have thousands of troops in Korea. They have forces in Japan. They're negotiating with Vietnam. They're negotiating with us. They have, in fact, signed the EDCA, but EDCA is being reviewed by the Supreme Court. They have, of course, a tie-up with Taiwan, and they positioned 2,500 Marines in northern Australia. They have used Singapore as a base for their LCS, or the littoral combat ships. These are very high-tech, fast-moving ships. And they're also talking with Thailand. In fact, they're talking with Thailand in order to prevent China from constructing a canal through Thailand, the Kral Canal, so that they can bypass the Malacca Strait. And they warned China to tread carefully in the South China Sea. The U.S. also released their new Asia-Pacific Maritime Security Strategy, which includes partnership with India, asking India to act east, in other words, to look east. South China Sea is east of India, so that they will have a strategic convergence with the United States to rebalance the situation there. And the U.S. warned China with more military, humanitarian exercises in the South China Sea. Of course, another part of the emerging coalition is Japan. Japan has an existing conflict with China, and it's a long-standing conflict. Japan said that the South China Sea security impacts on their national interest, and that is the reason why they restructured their defense program. And for the first time in 70 years, since World War II, the new laws would allow Japan to be able to deploy their military outside the territory of Japan if they feel that it is in their national interest. In fact, they came out with new laws so that it will enable them to intervene militarily in the South China Sea. How would they do this? When Japan is attacked, or when a close ally is attacked and the result threatens Japan's survival, they can use their military outside the territory of Japan. When there is no other appropriate means available to repel the attack and ensure Japan's survival and protect its people. And if the use of force is restricted to a necessary minimum. And I'd like to show you a video on how the Japanese debate in their parliament when they came out with this new defense strategy. That's an ongoing debate in the parliament. Now they can use Japanese troops to fight overseas.